بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala we're going to cover lessons 4 and 5 from the Tree of Faith. Okay, so you can just see where we are. Last week we were supposed to cover the beginning of developing Iman. So when we're talking about developing Iman, we're talking about what is it that helps to strengthen your faith? What is it that nurtures that faith, causes it to grow? And number 5, which is also the developing Iman part 2. So because we weren't here last week, we're going to do both of those classes today, inshallah ta'ala. And then next week, we'll start with the fruits of Iman. If we're not able to finish strengthening Iman today, that's fine. We'll be able to cover it, whatever is left next week, inshallah ta'ala. But I imagine that we'll be able to finish today, bi-idhnillah. Okay, so what we're going to do first is a quick review before we start with today's lessons, because we have to, especially because we missed last week, we kind of got to get back up to speed. So the first thing that's important to recognize is that actions are from Iman. And we talked about proofs for that, because if we talk about Iman from a linguistic perspective, what is Iman? I mean, even if you were to translate it, what would you translate it as? Faith. And normally when we think of faith without any other, definitions, if you will, where is that faith located? In the heart. In the heart, right? And that's where it's restricted to. And we needed to understand, and this is why we started it. You're going to see some of the reasons why today. Why we started dealing with, number 1, definition, defining Iman. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam have added on restrictions to linguistic definitions or expanded those definitions according to the Sharia. Or the Sharia, as defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, have not redefined words per se, but have given them a more defined meaning or expanded those meanings. So we gave, for example, definition of salat. Salat. Salat we translate as prayer, right? If you go, not talking to a Muslim, if you go to someone and you say prayer, what do they think of?
The way they pray?
Not just the way how do they pray? Anyway, what does that even mean?
Kneel hands together.
Put hands together or whatever. And dua, right? I prayed to God. What does that mean to them? They ask God for something, right? That's what prayer is. But and even in Islam, even in Arabic, a dua linguistically, salat linguistically means dua. It means to supplicate, pray. But then Islam came and put a more definitive meaning to it and other restrictions to help us understand. So same thing with Iman. So we talked about in the last class that actions are from Iman. And that this is the aqeedah or the creed of Sunnah, and that there are many different proofs that indicate that. So what are some of those proofs? What are some of those proofs?
Listen to hadith about the 70 plus odd branches.
Okay, so what about 70 odd branches? What is 70?
You have to stay.
Hajj is 70 branches?
No.
What is?
Iman.
Right. Iman, the Prophet ﷺ said, Iman bid'un wa sab'una shu'bah. That is 70 some odd components. The highest of them is La ilaha illallah. And the lowest of them is removing something from the harmful from the road. And what is from Iman? Al-haya. Right. That shamefulness, the modesty. That is from Iman. Right. What else? Give me another proof that actions are from Iman. From the Quran. Where did the Muslims used to pray? To what direction? They used to pray towards the direction of Al-Aqsa. And then the Qibla was changed to what?
To Mecca.
To the Kaaba.
The Kaaba.
To the Kaaba. Like, all right. Just making sure we all pray in the same direction. I know in this city of Long Island. Like, so it was changed towards the Kaaba. And what happened what was the concern of some of the believers when it was changed towards the Kaaba? That there were Muslims who had died prior to praying towards the Kaaba. They had only prayed towards Masjid al-Aqsa. And so Allah Azza wa Jalla reassured them that their deeds would be accepted. And He said what? مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. That Allah would not cause your Iman to go to waste. But what was He talking about? Iman here. There's Salat. He wouldn't cause their Salat to go to. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equated Iman with Salat, and that's because Salat is part of Iman. And so that's a clear indication from the Quran, and that's by ijma' of the scholars of Tafsir, the early scholars of Tafsir, that Iman here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about as-Salat. Like, why are righteous deeds mentioned separately from Iman? And Allah's statement, those who have faith and do righteous deeds. We just said that deeds are from Iman. Why are they mentioned separately? At least some of you took notes, because I see you going back.
When Iman is mentioned, it is talking about belief alone.
Okay.
When it's separate from.
Okay, so one answer to that would be that when Iman is mentioned with righteous deeds, that Iman refers to the conviction of the heart, and righteous deeds takes on a separate meaning. Same way when we have Islam and Iman, and there's no problem with that, and that's understood linguistically in Arabic and in English. In Arabic and in English. There's another answer. That is one answer. That is one of the answers that Ahl Sunnah use to counter the argument of the Murji'ah. What's the other? I'll give you an example.
In the hadith of Jibril, it's expounded like that.
Okay, well that's similar to what we have here, because in the hadith of Jibril you have Iman and Islam mentioned at the same time. So Iman is referring to those beliefs and actions of the heart, whereas Islam deals with the actions of the limbs. But there's another answer that Ahl Sunnah give, and that is as it relates to what? That even from a linguistic perspective, it's okay to add something on to a previous noun as long as you're expanding on it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or expounding, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِجِبْرِيلٍ وَمَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِلَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَجِبْرِيلٍ وَمِكَائِلٍ. So whoever is an enemy to Allah and His angels and His messengers, and Jibril and Mikael. Like, He said, whoever's an enemy to who? Allah.
To Allah, His messengers.
And His angels. And His messengers and Jibril. He said and. Jibril is what? He's an angel. And so that's fine. That works in the Arabic language. It works in the Quran, which is the best of speech, is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we do things like that in English as well. Where you mention something else because of its importance. Alright? So here, and this is the answer that Imam Shafi gave, that righteous deeds are mentioned so that nobody thinks that whatever is in the heart alone is enough to enter a person into paradise. That there has to be some degree of action. Like, what are the levels of believers mentioned in the Quran? Three. Who are they?
The one who commits the sins and leaves off obligations.
Okay, so he may commit sins and leave off obligations. That one is called the what? The Zalimu li nafsi. He's one who wronged himself. Right, but he's still a believer. Still a believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they are the ones who inherited the book. Like, second one, the one who takes a middle course. So he does what he's obligated to do. He leaves off major sins. And he makes tawbah for his other sins. Now, play it. And then the last, Sabiqun bil khayrati bi'idhnillah, those who do what? Are at the foremost in doing good. And each one of those levels have multiple levels in between them. Like, negation of Iman in text, I just want to comment on this real quick. We have a hadith, for example, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Wallahi la yu'min. Wallahi la yu'min. Wallahi la yu'min. By Allah, he doesn't believe. By Allah, he doesn't believe. By Allah, he doesn't believe. They said, who, O Messenger of Allah? He said, the one whose neighbor is not safe from his harm. Like, does that mean that if somebody harms his neighbor, he's a kafir? Right, so when we find negation of Iman in the text, when the Prophet ﷺ is talking to the Muslims, when the Muslims are being addressed, like the Prophet ﷺ says, for example, none of you believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Then what is being negated here is Kamal al-Iman al-Wajib. Right? So what's being negated here is the it is completion of obligatory aspects of faith. The completion of obligatory aspects of faith. Now somebody might say, wait a minute. There's parts of Iman that aren't obligatory? What's the answer to that? Yes. Removing something harmful from the road is part of Iman. Praying 2 sunnahs after Maghrib is part of Iman, right? This is Salat. Is it wajib? No. So when the Prophet ﷺ negates Iman, when he says this person doesn't have faith, right? And he's addressing the believers, then what he is negating is the completion of an obligatory aspect of faith. Not calling them kuffar. All right? Just want us to understand those are the summary of some of the main points of what we covered. And now, bi'idhnillah, it's time to get the juices flowing. Bismillah. All right, number 1, let's do it.
Strengthening faith revolves around 2 main themes. What are they?
Anybody got an answer? You know you need an exit visa from this class, right? All right, number 2, go ahead.
How does showing gratitude increase your faith? Discuss the relationship between Iman and Shukr.
It's going to be a good class.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Does dhikr on the tongue without thinking about it, without focus, have any reward?
You know how some people have to start allow out if they ain't even getting anything out. And they may even talk to somebody. They have the beads too. Hey, how you doing? You know, it's just something that I don't even know if that's on the tongue. But anyway, you get the idea. The answer might surprise you. Go ahead.
What are the 5 major objectives of the Sharia? How does this relate to increasing Iman?
Anybody want to take a stab at that one? Besides you. Anybody who did not study overseas want to take a stab at that? Play it. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, but you shit. I don't even see you, but I hear you.
Religion.
Okay.
Number 1. Religion.
Hold on. The 5 major objectives of the Sharia. The religion. What about the religion? What are we doing with the religion?
It's secure religion.
Okay, secure. Okay. That works. Secure the religion.
Wealth.
Wealth.
I know you're out of order, but
That's fine.
wealth.
We can make it a group project if you want. You can call on somebody.
Yeah, use some help.
You can call on. You can call on somebody that did not study overseas.
Religion, wealth,
Religion, wealth, your lineage.
Lineage, your honor.
honor.
Okay, that actually goes hand in hand there. Okay, that's 3.
Your life,
What's one of the worst? Good. Your life. So preservation of life.
preservation of life.
And there's one more.
Your mind.
There you go.
Your mind.
Yeah. Your mental health, your mind. Good. All right. How does this relate to increasing Iman? Inshallah, we'll cover that as we go along. Follow us here.
Name a companion who accepted Islam upon seeing the Prophet ﷺ for the first time. How can we benefit from such stories in increasing our own Iman? Name at least 5 ways that the author, rahimahullah alayhi, mentions that you can strengthen Iman.
Okay, so are we clear? This is basically everything we're going to cover today is surrounding the topic of how to increase your Iman. All right? And so what I want you to do right now is take a minute, not with your partner, with yourself. If you don't have a pen, that's fine. Use your phone and write it in your notes somewhere. I want you to list for yourself 5 ways, 5 things that you do that make you feel like your Iman increases. Clear? You have 1 minute starting now. 5 things that you do that you feel increases your Iman. And make sure you hold on to them. I do want you to record them because you're going to need them later. 45 seconds left. Let's Okay, you got 5 seconds. Okay, time is up. Time is up. You'll go back to them, inshallah, a little later in the class, speaking of time. All right, so for those of you who have books, we're going to start on page 43. Page 43 in the book, which is chapter 2. I know we skipped a section, or a little part of the book that deals with the increase in faith, or that faith fluctuates. Iman increases and decreases, and that's because we covered it along the way. It's because we covered that part along the way. Tell you, this section, let me just kind of draw your attention for those of you who do have the book. The translation of this section, while generally accurate, is cumbersome in places. And there are places where there are some inaccuracies. It is not our intention anyway to go through the book word for word. So the intention here is to try to cover each of the, how many ways did the author mention that our faith increases? Here he mentioned 13 specific ways. All right? So we are going to try to cover each of those 13 ways. That is the intention. But not every single thing that was said under each of those 13, nor are we going to stop and, correct the translation and things like that, because the general meanings are there. Alhamdulillah. General meanings are there. All right. The author begins by first discussing the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal He is the creator of causes and effects. And so, if we want faith to increase, then you have to do certain things that bring about that result. That there's a cause and effect relationship with things that happen. They don't just happen by osmosis. Even osmosis has a cause and effect relationship, honestly. But the reality is that the reason why he begins by this is just to show you that, look, you've got to make some effort. If you want your faith to increase, it takes effort. The same way when you go and you plant something, you want something to grow, you have to plant it. And not only that, you have to plant it at the right time. You have to plant it in the right soil, right? You plant things out of season, what's going to happen? It's not going to grow. You plant it in the wrong soil. If you go down to the beach and you try to plant something, nothing's happening. You can stick as far down the ground as you want. It's going to get all the sun in the world, but it's not going to grow. And so the point that the author begins with is just simply to show that if you want something to happen, if you want certain results, you want certain effects to come into play, then there are causes that bring that about. All right? So that's the basic thing that he starts with. So he says those things that would strengthen Iman, are of two categories, general and specific. General and specific. Okay, so we're going to go straight into right. We're going to go straight into the specific ways here. The general ways. Can you read those, Shaykh, please?
Sure. Contemplation, which is a big word for thinking about, of the signs of Allah recited in the book and the sunnah. As number two.
So interestingly enough, this isn't a translation where he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. In the Arabic, that doesn't exist. In the Arabic, he just kind of goes one. He mentions this as like one thing. And we're going to break that down for you. We're going to unpack it, inshallah. Keep going.
Contemplating upon the signs of Allah in His creation, desiring to learn the truth, the fulfillment of which is the purpose of one's creation. Number 4, acting upon this truth.
All right, so if we look at numbers 1 and 2 the Roman numerals 1 and 2 here, we have contemplating the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the signs of Allah are normally broken down into 2 separate categories. The one is the signs or ayat that are in the Quran. Those are ayat that are recited. And then we have the signs of Allah, al-ayat al-kawniyah. That is the signs of Allah in the universe. So the sun and its setting and rising, the signs of Allah. The moon, the sky, the oceans. All of these are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? Is it a sign? What does a sign do? It directs you to something, right? So these are indications of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rububiyyah. All right? All of the signs, including the signs that are in the Quran. So in general, they're broken down, but here it's not just that you recognize them. Recognizing them is good, and it's part of Iman, but here he uses the word ta'ammul, or to contemplate, to think about them, right? And so we're going to actually, again, he's mentioned these general things. So the first thing, subhanAllah, that he talks about to increase your faith is to do what?
Think.
To think. Islam is for the rational. It's for people who think, right? It's not for people who just mimic, react, or whatever. Right? You need to think. It's the thinking man's and thinking woman's religion. Like, and then he says, desiring to learn the truth. Desiring to learn the truth. So, in other words, that a person needs to know what he was created for. That knowing what you were created for and then acting according to that knowledge that you have gained increases your faith. So you have knowledge and action. Okay. So if we wanted to sum up those 4 things, as the translator has broken them down to 4 different things, we wanted to sum them up, we could sum them up with 2 things. Beneficial knowledge and what?
Righteous action.
Righteous actions. Acting according to that knowledge. It starts where? With the knowledge. Allah alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawat wa min al-ardi mithlahunna yatanazzalu al-amru baynahunna lita'lamu anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir wa anna Allah qad ahata bi kulli shay'in ilma. So here is at the end of Surah Al-Talaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Allah is the one who created 7 heavens. And from the earth, that which is like that which is like the heavens. The amr, the command comes down from Allah, لِتَعْلَمُوا, so that you know that Allah is able to do everything. And in Al-Dhariyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. He created jinn and mankind to worship him. But in Surah Talaq, he creates so that what? So that you know him. And so some of the scholars say, في الطلاق خلق لتعلموا وفي الذاريات خلق لتعبدوا. In Surah Talaq, he created so that you know, and in Surah Al-Dhariyat, he created so that you worship him. And that is why the majority of the early scholars of Islam said that tawhid was two categories. One category related to ilm, knowledge, and the other category related to ibadah. That's a story for a different day. The point here is that what? That knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to breed ibadah. And that if a person truly knows his creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will worship him. And he will love to worship him. He will love to worship him, subhanAllah. The same way, not the same way, astaghfirullah, but if we look at the creation, aren't there people who, because of their status in your life, you love to serve them? There are.
Yes.
No doubt about it. There are people that because of the favors that they've done for us, or because of their qualities, because of what they do for the community, because of whatever it is, we love to serve them. We don't even want them to do anything. You just sit back. We got it. Right? SubhanAllah. Why? Because they have certain qualities about them, or because of the favors that they've done for you. There is no favor that you have except that the origin of it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's nobody who has qualities like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the one who truly knows Allah loves to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright? Fine. So here, that is how your faith, that is how Iman is strengthened. Those two main ideas, and that answers our first question here. That strengthening faith revolves around two main themes. That is beneficial knowledge and righteous actions. Now, before we move on, because we're going to go into some of the specifics, inshallah, this is very important for us to know. When you get into specifics take the mind in different places, right? Which is good. So it's the same way that there's a difference between the coach who's sitting on the sideline and he's watching things from one angle and the person who's actually in the game looking at it from a different angle. So sometimes you have to go. This is how knowledge is. You have to go deep, and then you come back out and you gather it all together and you go back in. That's how things stick. But I want you to focus on these two things. I think these two things are very important for us, because everything that we're doing, we can ask ourselves, is this beneficial knowledge? Is this deed a righteous action? If not, your Iman is not increasing at that set time. And so what you wind up having to do, and don't get me wrong, Islam is not that you have to, Islam does not require that all day, everything you're doing is either gaining beneficial knowledge or doing a righteous deed. Islam does not require that of us. Our Prophet ﷺ told Hanbala, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, sa'atan fa sa'a. There's a time for this, and there's a time for that. But the problem with us is, we shouldn't make the times equal. It doesn't mean you get, 8 hours a day where you're doing righteous deeds or beneficial knowledge, then 8 hours where you're doing things that totally contradict those righteous deeds and beneficial knowledge. And so what happens is, you can start monitoring yourself and saying, is what I'm doing right now helping to increase my Iman? And if it's not, is it doing the opposite? Is it causing my Iman to decrease? Or is it one of those things that's there in the middle? Mubah. Something that is permissible to do. And Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala, this is from fiqh al-ibadah. Ahmed rahimahullah used to talk about, and I don't remember the exact phrase, but he used to talk about the importance of al-lahu al-mubah, which is like permissible play, because it does what? It gets you, it takes, it removes you from that realm so that you can go back stronger. It's like building muscle. If you lift the same weights every day, the muscle never has a chance to do what? Develop. It never has a chance to strengthen, right? So a lot of times when a person's doing the same thing all the time, it loses its effectiveness, right? And so there has to be some variety, there has to be something else that's going on so that you can go back stronger. And if you're doing it for that reason, it's like sleep. Sleep is mubah. It's permissible. There's no reward or sin for sleep. But if a person sleeps with the intention of revitalizing himself so that he can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better, then his sleep becomes ibadah. Well, sleep can become haram. You know, because a person can sleep with the intention of gaining strength to do something that's haram. So, the whole point is what? We're talking about strengthening faith. And strengthening faith, and remember when we say Iman is what? Statements and actions. That statement of the heart, your beliefs, your actions of the heart, and the actions of the limbs. So when we're talking about increasing and strengthening faith, we're not just talking about strengthening conviction, which is going to become clear in the ta'ala as we move on. Tahir. Father Shaykh.
Knowledge of the beautiful and perfect names of Allah. Those that occur in the book and the sunnah have an ardent desire to understand their meanings and to worship Allah through them. It is established in the two sahihs that the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has 99 names, 100 less one. Whoever memorizes and understands them will enter paradise.
All right. So again, the author begins with what? So now we're going to go into specifics. The general is what? Beneficial knowledge and righteous actions. All of these next 13 that we cover, inshallah ta'ala, are going to fall under one of our two broad categories of beneficial knowledge or righteous actions. Bi'idhnillah. All right, so we start out with the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal's beautiful names. SubhanAllah. And, first question is, based off of what was just read, how do we know Allah's beautiful names? Where do we find them?
In the Quran.
In the Quran.
And in the Sunnah.
And in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And those two sources together are called what? Revelation. Revelation. Al-Wahy. So we only know Allah's names through Al-Wahy, through revelation. We can't just come and make it up. You might find somebody named Abdul whatever. Say, wait a minute, where is that name? Is that name in the Quran? Is that name in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? If not, then we can't accept that as a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright? Here, the author says, those that occur in the book and the Sunnah, having an ardent desire to understand their meanings. That is number one. Number one. When it comes to the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you read these names and you don't just let them run off your tongue, but that you do what? That you understand their meanings. So throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many of his names. Innahu Sami'un. What's Sami'? The one who hears everything. Qareebun. One who is close. Mujibun.
Responds.
The one who responds. MashaAllah. So, the point is, many of you have memorized the names that are at the end of Surah Al-Hashr, right? Hu Allahu. Alimul Ghaybi wa Shahada. What's Alimul Ghaybi wa Shahada mean? What's that mean?
He's knowledgeable of the seen and unseen.
The one who has knowledge of that which is seen and unseen, right? Or unseen and seen. The point here is that, because we're not going to go into that right now, so I'll talk about that in a minute. the point is here that the first stage, when we talk about knowledge, is number one, identifying that this is the name of Allah. And then the second thing is to know the meaning of that name that you have identified. And then he says to worship Allah through them. Now, I'm not a fan of that translation, though I see how he got there. But what does that mean in English? Does that mean anything to you? Worship Allah through them? No, I'm asking. I'm not trying
to understand what the names mean.
Okay.
And to like.
No, he's right. He's right. There's sisters upstairs. They can't.
Like when you take the all hearing.
Okay.
All right. You have to understand that Allah Azza wa Jal hears everything.
Right.
Even the smallest sound on, like you hear a mouse piss on cotton, for lack of a better word. That's the only thing I can think of.
You meant urinating.
Okay. All right. Everybody understands what that means. But no, I mean, I can bring some reality to it.
That's fine. That's fine. He hears an ant crawl on a rock.
There you go.
There you go.
So, and the worship, that is worship in itself. To understand that he hears everything, and he sees everything, and he knows everything.
Okay. So, well, let's stick with as-Sami', for example. So, like you said. So, knowing, in fact, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears it. So, when we say, or when it's said here, worship Allah through them, I think what we're trying to, what's trying to be said here is that you worship Allah, because what order did it come in? It comes in knowledge of that name and what it means, and then worshiping Allah based on that knowledge that you have. Worshiping Allah based on the knowledge that you have for that specific name. Right? So, as-Sami' requires a certain type of worship. You're praying to him because what? Because you know he hears.
Right.
Right? You're making dhikr of him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you know he hears that. I mean, you get the point. So that's part of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on your knowledge of that particular name. Worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on your knowledge of that particular name. And then there are going to be things that you refrain from because you know he hears everything. So you're not going to say things that are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what do we hear? What did we get here? Identifying the name, knowing what it means, and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on the knowledge of that name. So this is very important point. In fact, the author says that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is the base for all Iman. And no doubt it is. No doubt about that. Alright, the Prophet ﷺ says, as it comes to Cair Bukhari, Muslim lillahi 99 isman, 100 illa wahida. Man ahsaha dakhala al-jannah. Allah has 99 names, 100 less one. Whoever ahsaha. Alright, let's keep that like that for a minute. Whoever ahsaha dakhala al-jannah will enter paradise. The author goes on. He says what ihsa means. Can you read that part? So we're on page 44. Meaning by this,
whoever memorizes them. So
that's the first stage. I want you to, like, if you got the book, just put a number 1 there, because that's number 1. Okay.
Understands them.
Yeah.
Believes
2,
in them.
3.
And worships Allah by means of them, shall enter paradise.
So there's like 4 things that just came under ihsan, right? So to say whoever memorizes them enters Jannah is not correct. That's not correct. All right? We need to understand that, because a lot of people think that, okay, that's my ticket to Jannah. Just go ahead and knock out these 99 names that they found in a book somewhere, and that's it. Khalas. Everything else is good. I can do anything now, because I already have this go to Jannah free card, right? So here, ihsa is what? Starts off, memorize, understand,
believe in them,
right? And number 4 is to what? Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to the knowledge that you have of that particular name. Do you hear what the Prophet said though? If you do that, then what?
Said you guarantee paradise.
Paradise, subhanAllah. And bi'idhnillah, our next 10-week class, which is going to start in September, inshallah, is going to be on the names of Allah. Bi'idhnillah. How do we determine what is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does it have to have an alif and lam in front of it in the Quran or not? The Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Some names that people think are names of Allah, but may not be. And inshallah ta'ala we'll cover that along with we'll take it just a methodical approach to each name bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, mentioning the name, the proof from the Quran and Sunnah for that being a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what belief in that name entails, and some of the ways that we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through those names. Because this right here, knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names and believing in them properly, the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions and what they understood from the text, as the author talks about here, that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala is the base, it is the root of all faith, and it is the quickest way to develop faith and cause it to grow. And so bi'idhnillah, that is going to be our study starting in September bi'idhnillah ta'ala. The author goes on to say, now go down to the last paragraph, Shaykh. Know that this knowledge, yes.
Know that this knowledge must be free from the sickness of ta'til or tamthil, which has afflicted many of the people of innovation, those whose path opposes the way of the messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam.
Right, so here, for those of you who study the al-aqeedah al-wasatiyah, you will not be excused if you don't know what ta'til and tamthil is. So we're going to ask, what is ta'til and what is tamthil? What does that mean? Sorry? Let's start with ta'til. What is ta'til? What does that mean? No, that doesn't mean like it. Not ta'til.
You're changing the meaning.
Not ta'wil. Yeah. Sorry? So negating that name, or you could actually say to make it devoid of any meaning, right? To claim that the name has no real meaning, and that has different ways that's done. This is not our intent to go deep into that, but we will deal with it, inshallah, when we cover the names of Allah Azza wa Jalla. No, distort would be closer to ta'wil as opposed to ta'til. So ta'til, basically what they're doing is they're saying that's not really Allah's name. Or it's Allah's name, but it doesn't have any meaning. So now, Allah calls himself as-Sami' in the Quran, but he doesn't hear. Oh, for certain. I got an email live. I got an email yesterday. Anyway, it's about a brother who studied Islam, and in any event, in the email it says, we're going to study why you can't say that Allah has a hand, and how these anthropomorphic, interpretations have led to the distorting and all this. So my first thing was, first of all, why are we getting people who? Why are we messing with people's fiqh? Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran, He says to shaitan, what prevented you from bowing or prostrating to what I created with what? My own two hands. Okay, so now if we say, you can't say Allah has a hand, can I read the Quran or not? No, really, what just happened? Allah Azza wa Jalla said in the Quran, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, Allah's hand is over their hands. I mean, the point is, Allah Azza wa Jalla said that about himself. Now, to come, and this is the second sickness here, to use the translator's term, he says, and also we have to stay away from what? Tamthil. And that is to what?
To like it.
To make a
Creation.
likeness to his creation. So we can't come and say Allah's hand is like this, no. But to say that Allah has a hand, Allah said he had a hand. Who am I to come now and say that he didn't know what he was talking about when he had to do that? This is Allah talking about himself. There's nothing like that to him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he said that about himself. And he has the right to say about himself what he wants to say. We only know about Allah when he informed us of. So to come say now that you can't say that, or that's haram, or then we might as well just stop reciting the Quran. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about himself. But in any event, that is ta'til, which is to claim that what?
The negating.
To negate any understanding of that name. To make it void of any meaning. And a tamthil is to make a likeness. To say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name or attribute is similar to something else. And every one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is indicative of an attribute. So Allah is as-sami', meaning he is the hearer, and the attribute is that he what? That he hears. That's a quality that he has. And every name is like that. Again, we're going to cover that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala in about a month and a half. So, wow, subhanAllah. Okay, so let me. I don't want to just skip over this, but we don't have a lot of time. We're already in the second hour, believe it or not.
But we're enjoying this. This is necessary.
Okay, I'm good. Jazakallah khair, Doc. Let's do this. I want to read you a hadith because I think that it's major, and just in trying to get an understanding of how does knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names increase your iman. So again, what is iman?
Faith.
Right. So we got both statement and action. Knowing that Allah is, for example, al-Basir. Does that help us in any way? Did that? 1 second, the batteries.
One over there.
Sorry, no, I had one to do. Should be back in action in a second. Okay. So, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Basir, how does that increase you in faith? How does that increase you in iman? Sorry?
When we know that he can see us.
Okay, so you know that he can see us. I'll just repeat it, Shaykh.
And would limit our sinfulness, hopefully.
Okay, so inshallah that would limit sins. So that, and sins do what to your iman? Decreases. So staying away from sin is one of the ways to help develop and nurture faith. Right? So that's one thing. What else? Yeah.
He's the author of sight. He's the author of sight, so it makes us be appreciative.
Allahu Akbar. MashaAllah, that's good. He's the author of sight, meaning he is the giver of sight. So that makes us appreciative. Just thinking that he is al-Basir, that makes us appreciative of the fact that we can see. And that now brings about shukr. And as we're going to cover, shukr helps to, or gratitude helps to increase your faith. Yes?
I have a question that maybe you want to answer it later.
Well,
But no, this is very
can
important.
you answer this question?
Knowing has different levels is what I'm saying.
Allahu Akbar. Nah. Jazakallah khair. No, it's very important because knowledge is of different levels. And understanding what it means to be al-Basir is going to vary from, person to person, depending on their knowledge. But let me just say this. Would you refrain from doing certain good deeds knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to see me? So I want to do it because I know that Allah is going to see me and reward me for it. You know what I mean? Like these are, knowing that Allah is watching you also helps you from being a mura'i. You know what a mura'i is? Someone who shows off. Because now I'm saying, wait a minute, why do I care what he
Thinks.
what he's looking at me do. Why do I care about this person looking at me? I know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is looking at me. So that's more than enough. That's more than enough. I don't need anybody else to watch. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla is watching, he's looking at me. This hadith, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, Yadhaku Rabbuna. Let me go back. There's another hadith, since we were dealing with Sami' and al-Basir. The hadith of Aisha, the famous hadith, where Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for being as-Sami'. Subhanalladhi wasi'a sam'uhu al-aswat. Glory be to the one whose hearing has encompassed all sounds. She said that woman who came to complain to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about her husband was in the same room. She was talking to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I could see them, and I couldn't hear what they were talking about. But Allah Azza wa Jalla revealed what? لَقَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا. قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا. So Allah Azza wa Jalla revealed the fact that He heard the one who came to you complaining about her husband. But even Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was in the room with them and could see, she couldn't even hear. And that's why she said, glory be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has heard those sounds, who hears all sounds, whose hearing encompasses everything. That if all of the people, look at that, on Arafah, since we're coming up on Hajj, how many people on Arafah every year? 3 million. All of them making dua at the same time in different languages. And it doesn't confuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't get mixed up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears it all and He answers it all for those who are sincere. I mean, if 3 people stood in front of you talking at the same time, what happens?
You can't
Yo,
understand.
can you please, just 1 minute, please.
The same language.
In the same language. In the same language. And so these are things that honestly, you know, when we talk about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't just want to rush by them. There's this hadith that I did want to read. It's the hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ضَحِكَ رَبُّنَا مِنْ قُنُوتِ عِبَادِهِ وَقُرْبِ غَيْرِهِ. That the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laughs at the despair of some of His servants, even though their situation is soon to change. Even though their situation is soon to change. And so, one of the companions said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Messenger of Allah, يَضْحَكُ أَوَ يَضْحَكُ رَبُّنَا. Our Lord laughs. Now mind you, we got these same people who would say, you can't say that Allah has this, you can't say that, you can't say. This wasn't the reaction of the companion. Do our Lord laughs? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said yes. And then they said, we shall never be deprived of good from a Lord who laughs. This gives us hope. Allah laughs. Alhamdulillah. This gives us hope. Right? And so, not to come and deny these names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but look at how we can benefit them from them in our Iman. Like, next.
Contemplating upon the Quran. Contemplating is that big word for thinking about, pondering. The one who contemplates upon it will always benefit from its sciences and minutiae. That means it's small stuff.
You know, and that again does not exist in the Arabic. It says min ulumihi wa ma'arifihi.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know where that translation came from. But basically what he's saying is that one will always the one who contemplates over the Quran or ponders over the Quran will always benefit from the knowledge and information that comes in the Quran.
Big or small.
Yeah, but again, that wasn't mentioned. That was the translator's thing. Yes.
تقرأ
No, just keep reading. Yeah, as would serve to increase his faith, Allah says, right. إذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. We mentioned this ayah several times.
When his verses are recited to them, it increases them in faith, and they put their trust in their Lord.
Nah. So again, what increased them in faith? According to the ayah, what has increased them in faith?
The verses.
What about the verses? Huh? The simple recitation, simply hearing those verses. But who are we talking about here? We're talking about the believers. So it's not just mere recitation that they're hearing. They're also understanding what is being recited to them, and they are contemplating. They're thinking about that. That is what does what? Increases them in faith. And so when you contemplate the knowledge that you find in the Quran, or that you gain in the Quran, what are we talking about here? What knowledge do you find in the Quran? The most important is the knowledge about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're going to get all of those names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his actions from the Quran. You're going to learn about the hereafter in the Quran. You're going to learn about the stories of the prophets who came before our prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and their interaction with their people. And all of this helps to increase a person in faith. It also does another thing, and I'll just cover some of the points briefly that the author covers, and we'll move on. It also helps you, when you think, it helps you see the consistency in the Quran. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Had the Quran been from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have found in it what? Much contradiction and discrepancies. Play. If you go to page 49, skip to page 49. It's kind of weird the way it's structured, but if you go to page 49, you will see where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions where? Right. Okay. Right. Like, start from the top of page 49. Allah has informed us.
Allah has informed us in many verses that the Quran is a sign for the believers and those possessing certainty, yaqeen. This is because through reciting it and pondering it, they attain such knowledge, faith, and certainty as Allah wills, and then continuously increase in this knowledge, faith, and certainty. Pondering the Quran is one of the greatest routes that lead to the increase and strengthening of faith.
Right. So then the author mentions the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكُمْ مُبَارَكٌ لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ وَلِيَتَذَكَّرْ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Page 49. Page 49. Again, like I said, it's structured a little bit. Let me just put it like this. The author brings his point and then he revisits the point. So I wanted to put it together for you to keep you from being distracted. So it is a book we have revealed to you, full of blessings, so let people of intelligence ponder its signs and take heed. Here, again, he's talking about the recitation of the Quran, and he's also talking about pondering over the Quran. He then says, أَفَلَمْ يَدَّبَّرُوا الْقَوْلِ. Have they not pondered these words? Meaning that what? So he's criticizing those people who don't have faith, who have disbelieved in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who have disbelieved in his message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَمْ يَدَّبَّرُوا الْقَوْلِ. Have they not pondered over these words? Have they not pondered over the Quran? Had they pondered over the Quran, the result would have been what? That they had faith, that they had Iman. But because there was no pondering, then they did not have the necessary faith. There's a lot that can be said about this. The point is, and I think that Shaykh Hanif deals with this frequently in his reflections with you all, as he did with Surat Al-Kahf and now with Surat Maryam, to see how reflecting over the Quran, in fact, does increase one's faith, one's iman. Like 2.3 shit. Right here.
Knowledge of the ahadith of the Prophet, that's the plural alayhi salatu wasalam, of the word hadith.
Right.
All of the hadiths of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam serve to strengthen one's faith. As the servant increases in his knowledge of the book and the sunnah, so too does his faith and certainty. So much so that he could attain the level of ilm al-yaqeen.
All right, so here, I'm going to go through this quickly because the author actually, it's only that first line. Like I said, there's a little, it gets interesting with the translation. Only that first line, which is all of the ahadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam serve to strengthen one's faith. The actual Arabic says, knowledge of the hadith because they detail both theoretical and practical aspects of iman. So what is happening now? Let's just go here. He says, the author says, a hadith detail both theoretical and practical aspects of iman. Now, when you look back, what was our first few weeks? What were we studying? The definition of iman. And a lot of that we gained from what? From the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Those are theoretical aspects of iman, the knowledge-based thing. But then the Prophet ﷺ has detailed for us every other part of Islam, and those parts of Islam are parts of iman as well. And so knowing these ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ help to strengthen your faith, both the conviction part and the action part. Knowing these ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's going to come. So the author goes on for a few pages here, to discuss the importance of knowledge and growing faith. So I'm going to mention just the 3 points, which should turn to, you can turn to page 50. But what was covered is number one, as a person's knowledge grows, so does his iman and so does his yaqeen. Now what's the difference between iman and yaqeen? What is yaqeen? Certainty. Right. And iman?
Statement.
Statement and action. Nice. Okay. So what happens, how is yaqeen related then? In that sense.
It's not related to the system.
It's an action of the heart.
It is an action of the heart, no doubt about it. But what? Yeah.
Well, yaqeen be a level of iman.
Right. So yaqeen is that higher level of iman. So for example, and then we have, as you know, we have ilm al-yaqeen, and ayn al-yaqeen, and haqq al-yaqeen. So there's even for yaqeen, there's levels. And look, ikhwan, don't look at this as some type of just something theoretical. This is stuff you can feel. So, for example, if somebody told you that Dr. Mukhtar gave the khutbah at UMIC 3 Fridays ago. I don't know if that's true, but let's just assume it is. Okay. I told you that. Then you believe what I'm telling you. It's the truth, inshallah. So do you believe me? Yeah. I told you. And I mean, I don't really have any reason to lie about that. You don't know me to lie about that. So we're going to say, okay. So you went to somebody else and you said, yeah, Dr. Mukhtar gave the khutbah at UMIC 3 weeks ago. And they say, you sure? Then you say, yeah. You say, yeah. That's yaqeen. I'm sure. We got it? That's yaqeen. That's ilm and yaqeen. You have knowledge because I informed you about it, and it's coming from a trustworthy source, inshallah. That was accused. All right. Ayn al-yaqeen is a little different. Ayn al-yaqeen would be, for example, you saw his name written down, or you saw a still shot of him on the minbar. And you say, that's another level, right? I told you, but then you actually saw. You saw it.
That increases it.
So that's an increase. You were sure from the beginning, but now you're even more sure. It's like, how can you opinion you were there? You experienced it yourself. Nobody can come tell you otherwise at this point. That can't shake. Even your certainty might shake at times. You're sure. And somebody says, no, Dr. Mukhtar, no, because he was in Michigan 3 weeks ago. You start saying, nah, man. Nah. So there's certainty, but even that yaqeen may even can fluctuate at times, depending on what else is going on. That's the difference between ilm al-yaqeen and ayn al-yaqeen, which means you've actually seen it, and haqq al-yaqeen, which is when you've experienced it, right? So what the author here says is that a person can study enough of these of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that they'll reach that level of ilm and yaqeen. They'll reach that. So I mean, you think about the Ibrahim ﷺ when he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what? Arini kayfa tuhyi al-mawta. Show me how you bring life to the dead. Did he disbelieve in that? No. He was a messenger of Allah, the greatest of the prophets. Right? Right. Well, no, he wanted ayn al-yaqeen. He wanted to be. Haqq al-yaqeen is he dies and he's brought back to life. He's experienced it. Not just that he saw it. Okay?
Muslim the tablets.
Exactly. And that's why our Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ الْخَبَرُ كَالْمُعَايَنَةِ. Hearing about it is not like seeing it. Hearing about it is not like seeing it. So somebody says, yeah, so-and-so sent me a nasty text. I'm like, what? Wow, subhanAllah, And then he takes a screenshot of it. He sends it to you. There's another level of certainty, right? Yeah, go ahead, Shaykh. Sure.
So, how would you marry a Eid?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's gonna come, inshallah. Actually, all right. So the first thing. So I just want to cover very briefly what the author himself covered in those pages that we just skipped. The first thing he talked about was, as a person's knowledge grows, so does his what? So does his iman and his yaqeen. Two is that he also has a discussion about the importance of having well-grounded knowledge. And he says that it is this knowledge that repels any doubt that would come or any wavering that may come to a person. And it promotes absolute certainty. All right? And so what we just talked about right now, say Dr. Mukhtar gave the khutbah 3 weeks ago, this place. Somebody else. So you're certain about that because you got it from a good source. But then somebody else comes and says, nah, he was in Michigan. That does what? That causes some wavering or some doubt. So you need more knowledge. The knowledge is going to cut off that doubt. All right? Yeah, go ahead.
So is it wrong on my part that the picture they shown could have been an old picture? And I saw it differently.
But let's just say I'll give you. I told you, okay. So you're pretty certain.
Yeah.
But then Dr. Mukhtar told you too.
That's the yaqeen.
Now, no, the first one was yaqeen. The first one you were sure, but now you've gotten another level because it prevents any doubt.
Okay.
It prevents any wavering. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is the type of knowledge that we're searching for. Not because, again, like Dr. Mukhtar said a minute ago, that knowledge is of different levels as well. How you know different things is of different levels. And so you don't want to be satisfied with just that base level. You want to go to a level that's going to cut off down. Clear? Alhamdulillah. Like the last thing that I wanted to point out that he mentioned, and this is actually an important principle in Islam, if you will, and that is, he says that those who are firmly grounded in knowledge they understand the ayat that have a degree in the Quran, the ayat from the Quran, that have a degree of ambiguity. Meaning that there are certain ayat in the Quran that are open to interpretation. Some may read it one way and understand it one way, and some may read it another way and understand it another way. That the way of Ahl Sunnah and those who are strongly rooted in knowledge, firmly grounded in knowledge, their way is to understand those texts in light of the muhkamat, which is the majority of the Quran, which is that it has an explicit interpretation, very clear cut. And so they understand those ayat in light of the ayat that are explicit in meaning. And that's just important as we go along down the line. We'll cover that more when we get to names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll tell you, bismillah. Let's keep it moving.
Knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ. Knowing his sublime, that means very high to catch. Knowing his and very high period. Knowing his sublime morals and manners and perfect characteristics. Whoever comes to really know him would never doubt his truthfulness and veracity. Veracity is a higher word for truthfulness. And veracity. And would willingly believe in all that he came with. The book and the sunnah, the religion of truth. Or is it that they do not recognize their messenger and therefore do not acknowledge him?
Because if they did know him, then they would know that he was truly the messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. So simply knowing the character of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and his truthfulness. SubhanAllah, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent the letter to Heraclius, which was the emperor of Rome, right? When he sent that letter to the emperor of Rome, it so happened that there was a delegation from Quraysh, Kufa, that were actually there in Rome in the court of the emperor when the letter of the Prophet ﷺ got to them. And amongst so the emperor says to that delegation, which one of you is the closest in relationship to Muhammad, this man that sent me this? And so it was Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan at that time was not a Muslim. And so he said, come, stand in front of me. And he made the rest of the delegation stand behind Abu Sufyan. And he told his interpreter to tell them that if he says something that's not right, to correct him. And so Abu Sufyan was stuck. He couldn't lie. He had to answer the questions of the emperor truthfully. And so Heraclius asked him a series of questions. Now, how did I get on this point?
Knowing the Prophet.
Knowing the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ. So one of the things he asked him a series of questions. For example, he asked him, was there a king who was from his ancestors? And they replied, no. Is he of noble descent or ignoble? So he was of noble descent. He asked him, do his followers increase or are they decreasing? Right? He asked him a number of things. He asked him, was he known to be a liar before he sent this letter, before he started claiming that he was a prophet? So anyway, after asking them a series of questions, several questions, he then said, I asked you about his lineage, and you said that he was from the most noble tribe. Had he been from an ignoble, background, I would have assumed that he was just trying to get status. I asked you, did he have any kings in his ancestry? And you replied, no. Had there been kings in his ancestry, I would assume that he was trying to do what? Just reclaim that kingship. The kingship, right, or that kingdom. I asked you about what was the other thing?
Was he truthful?
Before that, I asked you about his followers, and you claimed that they are increasing, and he said that this is the sunnah, or this is basically the way of the messengers and those who follow them until the message is complete, that they increase. And I asked you about his truthfulness. Was he known to lie before claiming that he was a prophet? He said no. He said, and this is why. He said, he went on to say, This is the reason why he believed that he was the messenger of Allah. He said, because if he didn't lie on other than Allah, why would he lie about Allah? You understand? The person who lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the worst of liars. So you don't have a person claiming prophethood, claiming to be a messenger of Allah, except that you can look at their way and you can see that this person here is a truthful person. Not going to lie about it. Even some of the kuffar. I read a book by a Christian written in the 19th century, 1870 something. And even though he didn't believe that the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet, he said there's no way that this man didn't believe that he was a prophet. In other words, he definitely believed himself that he was a prophet. He talked about his character. He said, look at how he did with the people of Tahir when they abused him. And he left them. I mean, he had a number of examples, you know, from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't believe because the Christians at that particular time, especially, they had very limited access to Islamic sources. But that's a story for a different day. The point is, knowing the Prophet ﷺ, knowing his character, knowing his seerah, knowing these things about the Prophet ﷺ, increase a person's faith. They increase a person's conviction that this man was definitely a messenger of Allah, and that Allah Azza wa Jal sent him with the truth. So therefore, those things that he has come with, they're the truth, and we accept them. You know, you look at the interesting story. You hear the khatib in the beginning of the khutbah. Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu, right? You know where that came from? You know what hadith? I mean, there's several hadith, but in Sahih Muslim, the hadith of Emaan, he heard about this man, this man with Quraysh said he was a madman. He said he was majnoon. He was affected by jinn, and he was like, look, instead of just talking, he's a nice guy. Radiallahu anhu, he became a companion later. But at this point, he wasn't a Muslim yet. And he said, you know, rather than just talking about it, I'm going to go and I'm going to help cure him. He was a Raqi. They used, obviously he wasn't using the Quran, but they used certain formula, if you will, to help heal people. So he said, I'm going to go to this man called Muhammad, and I'm going to cure him. Everybody's talking about he's Majnoon and all, but I got it. You know, so I'm going to go and I'm going to sit with him and I'm going to help cure him. And so he went to the Prophet ﷺ, and to use the words of one of our friends, he emptied his cup, right? He went and he said, listen, you know, I heard about you. Look, I heal people. Basically, you know, gave him an offer. We do it for free, and just take care of you. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "Are you done?" I said, "I'm done." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh, wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina, sayyiati a'malina." Now the man is listening. He understands all of this. He's saying all praise is due to Allah. You got to imagine him processing this. We praise him and we seek his forgiveness because we recognize that we fall short in that praise. He's processing all of this. When I we seek refuge in this one that we're praising from the evil of ourselves, the evil of what we. So he here now is listening to this man who's claiming that he's a prophet. He's saying he's from Allah. He's recognizing that he has some shortcomings. SubhanAllah. To the end of Khutbatul Hajj, and he said, bring that back. One more time. He said, give me your hand. I'm giving you the allegiance of Islam. Just tell me what I'm a Muslim. I believe, you know, he went to heal him. And he came away having his soul healed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, these are just one encounter with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, you look at the Abdullah ibn Salam, who was one of the, he was a Jewish scholar in Medina. He said when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam first came to Medina, in Jaffa al-Nas, and he said the people raced to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, so I went with them. He lived in Medina. He wasn't a Muslim, but he went with them and raced to see this man who everybody was talking about. He said, so I looked at his face. And he said, I knew it wasn't the face of a liar. It was not the face of a liar. SubhanAllah. I mean, look at that, right? So he goes on to say,
Battery's dying.
وَأَوَّلْ مَا سَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ. And the first thing that I heard him say was, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ أَفْشُوا السَّلَامِ. O people, spread the salams. وَأَطْعِمُوا الطَّعَامِ. And feed the people. وَصِلُوا الْأَرْحَامِ. And keep the ties, or keep those ties of kinship. وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامِ. And pray at night while the people are asleep. تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ بِسَلَامٍ. You will enter Jannah peacefully. And some of the scholars of Hadith say bisalam means you'll enter Jannah first, meaning no stopping off in hell. Straight. SubhanAllah. So you look at that, and then he accepted Islam. He accepted Islam. Just by seeing the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that is not the face of a liar. He was a scholar. He was a scholar, SubhanAllah. So knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ is something that both does what? It nurtures faith. It serves as a root of faith, but it also develops and increases one's faith. Naam, Sheikh.
This is why a just person who truly desires to follow the truth.
When the author says just, we would probably translate that as being objective, right? That this person is objective. He's going with no preconceived notions, no biases. He just wants to go and look at the life of this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Page 52? Okay.
Who truly desires to follow the truth, merely by hearing his words will quicken towards accepting faith in him, alayhi salatu wasalam, and then not have any doubt. Indeed, many of them, just by seeing his face, would know that he was not a liar.
And this is reference to the hadith of Abdullah ibn Salam, radiallahu anhu.
It was asked of them, why have you believed in Muhammad? They replied, he never ordered anything to which the intellect would say, if only he had prohibited it.
Now let's stop right there. It doesn't mean that everything that the Prophet ﷺ ordered or commanded, that people understood it fully, or that you're going to understand it fully. What this person is saying here is that there's no command in Islam that his mind said to him, or his intellect said to him, I wish he would prohibit that, not command it. He commanded us to fast the month of Ramadan. I wish he would prohibit that. No, nothing that the Prophet ﷺ commanded, except that that his mind, found it acceptable. Right.
And he never prohibited anything to which the intellect said, if only he had ordered it.
Oh, he prohibited intoxicants. Say, nah, he should have ordered us to drink.
So this intelligent person depended upon the excellence of his laws and his agreeing to the sound intellect in his acceptance of faith.
Right. In other words, the excellence of the laws of Islam and the fact that they agree with sound intellect is something that led him to Islam. I had a conversation today with somebody that happened to be in a bank. And so he says to me, how do you feel about interest? How do you feel about interest, right? Interestingly enough, he's not a Muslim, but he has Muslim children, right? So the issue of interest is an interesting topic. No pun intended, right? I really didn't intend to pun you. So I said to him, well, what we're talking about here, I said, from what angle? He said, these were his words, how do we feel about interest? We, like, I'm trying to figure out what common framework we have. So I said, well, you want to go back to rabbinical law? Because at the end of the day, interest is not something that just got prohibited by the Prophet ﷺ. This was the rules of Allah. I mean, from that time. I mean, and again, this is something preserved in the Jewish law. So they said, yeah, but you know what? Well, what are we talking about here? So I said, look, at the end of the day, if you look at the system of interest, let's not look at what a person may gain, that benefit that I might get by being able to go take a 30-year mortgage, for example, right? And be able to purchase a home that I wouldn't be able to purchase any other way. So I have to go get this loan with interest. Let's put that to the side because that's a personal thing. Let's look at the system. What does the system of interest do? It keeps the rich rich and the poor poor. That is what the system of interest does. You benefit simply because what? Because you already have money. So you get the benefit. And people who don't have money, they are the have-nots. They have to come to you to get a loan, and then you charge them for not having money. And so they have to do what? They've got to pay you even more, which means that they stay broke.
You get richer.
Right. So he said, well, no, I'm not talking about predatory lending and this type of stuff like that, where they kind of search. The predatory lending is like they look for you. They find out who's in a bad spot. Let me go give him something with 25% interest or something like that. He said, no, I'm not talking about that. I said, you don't have to. I said, because when you look at the system as a whole, if you permit a little, you have to permit a lot when it comes to that. I mean, this is the problem here, right? So when you look at even the gradual nature of intoxicants being prohibited in Islam, right? It didn't start out that khamr was forbidden. And it reached a gradual point till it was only forbidden what? To come to salat drunk. So that means that after Isha, you could drink. As long as you were okay by Fajr time. So there was but then what happened? Is that this is not something that's good for the preservation of one's mind. And it affects the mental health. And once you start making it okay, if you leave it at that, well, it's okay because now we got it in the house, but we only do it after Isha. Well, then you had a little too much. And so at Fajr, you're still not sober. So what happens is Islam closes that door. Even if a little might be okay. For some people, no, forget it. That's done. You understand? And so again, the same scenario when you look at the issue of interest, which has a whole different, thing that has to be studied. But the point about it is that it's nothing crazy. There's nothing crazy about the interest being forbidden. The problem is that we live in a society that's built on interest. And so we can't imagine any other way. And then when you see another way, you say, wow, subhanAllah. Just like with a lot of other things in life. When you get turned on to a different way, it doesn't have to be that way. You know that, right? And it's like, wow, I never knew that life could be so great. MashaAllah. So the point is that there's nothing in Islam that just contradicts the sound intellect. Again, we may not be able to fully grasp everything. Something may catch you off guard or something like that. But once you take a little time to study it, then you'll see that it's, in fact, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It was upon a similar premise, that is, a similar foundation or saying or idea or fact, that the leader of Rome, Heraclius, depended when he heard the description of the messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, and what he ordered and prohibited, to come to the conclusion that he, alayhi salatu wassalam, was the greatest of messengers and believed in him completely.
That is, that Heraclius believed in the Prophet ﷺ right then and there. He was like, he is the messenger of Allah, and if I get a chance to see him, he is going to do what? He is going to own this place right here. And I'm going to wash his feet. He's going to be a servant of the messenger ﷺ, right?
However, leadership and power prevented him from following him.
Watch closely here. Leadership and power. Leadership and power prevented him from following the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam completely. That is, prevented him from entering into Islam. Leadership and power do that to a lot of people from following the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and a lot of other things, even though they may be Muslim. That leadership and power is a fitna. It's a fitna for people. Right.
Such factors prevent many from accepting faith.
Right. Leadership, power, the desire for leadership power. Not that a person is a leader, not that the person has power, but that they desire it as something that has come into their heart. And so therefore they fear that shifting any of their reverence to someone else would therefore take away from their own, leadership and their own power. Keep it moving. Bismillah. All right, so what's the first four that we've covered for increase of faith? First four. La ilaha illallah.
Memorizes, understand.
Okay, so knowledge of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tayyib. Number two. Let's go in order. Number two, contemplating the verses of the Quran. Number three.
Believing in them.
Sorry?
Believing in them.
Believing in. Number two. Number one was what? Knowing the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two was contemplating the verses of the Quran. Number three was knowledge of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And number four was knowing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning his seerah, his characteristics, his shama'il. You know what shama'il means? There's a book by Tirmidhi called Shama'il al-Muhammadiyya. Shama'il are his physical attributes. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right. So knowing these things, knowing about our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and that's why I'm going to encourage Sheikh Hanif that the next year we dedicate to Seerah.
Oh yes.
So we dedicate some of that at least to the Seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, because it does help to increase faith. So what we're looking for, looking to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That knowledge that brings us closer to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So number four was knowledge of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, his seerah, his attributes, his character. Now, number five. Fellowship. Matthew?
Pondering over
There you go.
creation.
Hey, well, 2.5.
Pondering upon the creation of the heavens and the earth and all that is between them, upon the amazing variety of creation. And the creation of man himself is a potent invigorator of faith. This is because the greatness of this creation points to the greatness of the Creator and his omnipotence. That means his power and potency, which cannot be measured. Its conformity and harmony points to the vastness of Allah's knowledge and his all-encompassing wisdom. It's innumerable, you can't count them. Its innumerable blessings and plentiful bounties point to the expanse of Allah's mercy, his generosity and kindness.
SubhanAllah, stop there. Look at that. He says here that this is because the greatness of this creation, when you begin to ponder over the greatness of creation, how great must the Creator be? You understand? So it leads you to understanding that He is the all-powerful, the omnipotent, and that He is. Look at just the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He goes on to say its conformity and its harmony, meaning the system in which it runs. The fact that if the earth was just tilted a little bit differently, there wouldn't be life on earth. If the sun was just a little closer or a little further, that there wouldn't be life on earth. So that the conformity and its harmony points to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge and wisdom. His knowledge and his wisdom subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see how that contemplation takes you back to what? Knowledge of Allah. Knowledge of Allah. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك. The Prophet ﷺ used to recite these ayahs at night. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the 15th al-layli wa nahar, yani the changing of night and day. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the changing of the night or the alternation of the night and day are signs for the people who have wisdom, who have sense. Those who do what? يَذْكُرُونَ Allah. They remember Allah. Qiyaman, standing, qu'udan, sitting down, وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ, while they're on their sides. And they do what? They ponder, they think. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla is praising them for what? For thinking about the creation of the heavens and the earth. You know, a lot of us city dwellers, we don't do that. That's real. It's very different for people who live away and they experience that. Those stars, and they experience the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They think about the creation of the heavens and the earth. And then what? And then they say, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. Oh, our Lord, you didn't create all of this in vain. And you're thinking about the creation of the heavens and the earth. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is encouraging us to think about the creation of the heavens and the earth and all of that exists in this universe. Now, Shaykh, all of these factors.
All of these factors lead one to exalt its creator, give thanks to him, resort to his remembrance, and make the religion, the way of life, sincerely, exclusively, that is, for him alone.
Mm-hmm.
This is the essence and very spirit of Iman.
Allah. I mean, you know, subhanAllah, many times, and you'll as you read the Quran and you ponder over it, I'm sure some of you experience this in your reflection of Surah Al-Kahf, where Allah Azza wa Jalla gives the example of the earth which is barren, right? And all of us have driven at some point, you drive by land, there's nothing there, it's just, and then you come back some months later and there's vegetation growing and flowers. What did Allah do? He brought life back to the earth after it died. Those are things that you reflect over. This is reflecting over the creation. It helps you to then remember the hereafter. That Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to bring life back to the dead. And that it doesn't stop. Don't think that it's over with death, but that's just the beginning of something more permanent. Now,
Pondering over the many favors of Allah. The way that favors is spelled is the British spelling.
yeah.
Not for a blink of an eye.
We didn't have our Philadelphia Tea Party, no Boston Tea Party. We haven't gotten rid of the British yet, so
Not for a blink of an eye.
we might need to, though.
Is any object of creation free of his favors, and pondering over them leads one to have faith. This is why Allah called the messenger and the believers to display thanks to him. You who have faith, eat of the good things we have provided for you and give thanks to Allah if you worship him alone.
All right, work with your partner. You got 2 minutes. What are we talking about right here? Pondering over the favors of Allah. Okay? So the author says, not for a blink of an eye is any object of creation, anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, free of his favor. Yeah, that is, they are in need of Allah Azza wa Jalla's favors at all times. Right? Pondering over these favors leads one to have faith, leads one to have Iman. This is why Allah instructed the messenger and believers to show their gratitude to him. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum washkuru lillah. O you who believe, O you who have Iman, eat of the good things that we have provided for you, and show thanks to Allah. Show that gratitude to Allah, if you in fact worship Him alone. The question, that's from the author. Question is from the speaker. How does showing gratitude increase your faith? Because what are we talking about right here? We're talking about ways to do what? Increase faith. Increase Iman. That's part of it. That's a key right here. That was actually, you just unlocked part of the question. Discuss the relationship between Iman and shukr. The question is clear, right? I'm not saying the answer is clear, but that's why you have a partner, and you're going to sit with that partner for the next 2 minutes, inshallah ta'ala, and you're going to discuss the answer to those questions. You have 2 minutes starting now. Bismillah.
When we see long,
I know, you got to talk to somebody.
back from the dead, that none of us could have done that. Like that land we seen was barren, now we come back and vegetation. None of us could have done that with all the machines on. So just to reflect on that and say we couldn't do that, it's got to be something greater than us. That appreciate that.
Well, like I said, he's got some
Sight. Anything that take you objective. So what's your course? Oh, well, that's not part of it. That's not part of it. That's gratitude.
I see you got a dream team on
What we've seen makes humble ourselves.
Okay, the 2 minutes is up. I'm sorry. I gave you 10 seconds extra. Time is up. Look to it. Go somebody. Whoever raises their hand, just take them the mic, inshallah. Okay, so who's going to answer for us either one of the questions or both of them together? How does showing gratitude increase your faith? How does showing gratitude increase your iman? Bismillah, somebody. Okay. Hold on, because we need the mic. That might have decreased your faith.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Anam that He's already proclaimed that if you are grateful,
In shakartum,
lazidannakum.
I will increase you in what? In that favor? In iman?
And whatever.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. No, that's good. MashaAllah. I'm glad that you thought to bring evidence for what you're saying. Not okay. Good. Who else? Who else? These things require thought, by the way. It's not just something that's yeah. Go ahead, Shaykh.
Part two.
Oh, go ahead. Part 2 is fine. Go ahead.
Okay, in Surah Al-Insan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna hadaynahu sabila, imma shakiran wa imma kafura. So kufr is disbelief, but for those who are ungrateful to Allah is associated with kufr.
Right.
So therefore the opposite, the shakir,
Right.
is related to iman.
That's nice. That's nice. Jazakallah khair. Wow. I'm done, man. Just go ahead. Who else? Somebody else. Oh, these are good things, mashallah. This is good stuff. I know somebody else has. You got another team? You on that side? Emaan, Cair?
My partner has something good. He wants to keep it secret. It blew
No,
me
no
away.
secrets. No secrets.
It blew me away.
Bismillah.
Set up.
It's just an experience that I do. Things that I do.
Give it to me.
I was telling this chick that I would stand by the stove and just prepare an egg, and I would stop and reflect on the egg. And like this egg, I didn't do this egg. This egg belongs to my Lord. You know, and then I would sit in my backyard and see a leaf fall. And I would tremble. I would be scared because he knows every leaf that falls. How can I not be grateful? You know, just come on. How dare I? I can't do that. Then I would get up and I would go into the house and I would pray to her. That's his habit. You know, gratefulness. This is what I do all the time.
Okay. We'll use some of the words of the author himself. If you look right below on page 54, I just erased it so that you couldn't cheat. But it's there in the book. He says, faith incites one to give thanks to Allah. And giving thanks to Allah revitalizes and increases faith. Both matters go hand in hand. Faith incites one to give thanks to Allah. In other words, when you recognize the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that recognition is an act of Iman. Recognizing that favor. Recognizing the favor then does what? Incites you to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shukr is an action. It's an action of the heart. That's where it starts. And the more it increases, your faith increases because it's part of faith. Faith is not just something that, it's not just belief. Al-Iman qawlun wa amal, right? Iman is what? Statement, belief, statement, actions. If the belief increases, then the what? The faith increases. No, your faith increases. It's part of Iman. Your Iman increases. If your actions increase, then your faith, your Iman is increasing. So when your shukr increases, your Iman also increases. By definition. Simply by definition. But again, recognizing the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages shukr. It encourages that gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases your faith. So the two matters go hand in hand. That's what the author was saying. Inshallah. The point is that we should ponder, like we ponder over the creation. We should ponder over the many favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of the greatest favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us are the intangible ones. We shouldn't think automatically like Allah has blessed me with something material. Allah blessed us with Islam. SubhanAllah. There's so many people, they can't cope with anything because they have no Iman. Islam, subhanAllah, wallahi. For those of you who have lived any other way, then you know, probably more than other people, the real ni'mah, the real blessing of this deen. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored you, and you didn't have to be favored. It's not because of something you did.
Frequently making the dhikr of Allah. Making the dhikr of Allah and supplication, which is the essence, the inner being of worship. The remembrance of Allah implants the tree of faith in the heart of the servant.
So what's happening now? He's saying that and again, this is why we go back to that tree all the time, so that you can keep thinking about your heart as the soil where that Iman is planted, right? So remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps to keep those seeds deep. in the heart, right? So it can grow, right?
The more the servant,
No. Yeah. Remembrance of Allah plants.
the remembrance of Allah implants the tree of faith in the heart of the servant.
It implants it, and then it does what? It nourishes it, and it causes it to grow. Right.
The more the servant makes the dhikr of Allah, the stronger his faith becomes. Whoever loves Allah will frequently make mention of him. The love of Allah is from faith. Indeed, it is his essence. It's his inner being.
In fact,
it's its core.
In fact, whoever loves something makes a lot of mention of that. Whatever it is that you love, you mention it frequently. And so, whoever loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you grow in your love of Allah from the first thing that we covered, which is what? Knowing Allah through His names and His attributes and His actions subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever loves Allah is going to make frequent mention of Allah Azza wa Jalla. He's going to remember Him much. He is going to frequently make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said to his companions, should I not inform you of the best of your deeds, that which is most pleasing to Allah, those that will raise you most in status? It is better for you than going out in battle and having your necks cut and you doing the same to others. That is, it's better than any type of battle that can be done. They said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah the Exalted. And so the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that is very important for us in increasing our faith. The question here, because I think it's important when we talk about dhikr to look at different levels of dhikr. So the question says, does dhikr on the tongue, where you're not really thinking about what you're saying, there's no focus to it. You're saying subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha, but it's just something you're saying. You're not really thinking. You're thinking about something totally different. Does this have any reward? Does this have any reward? What do you think?
I think it has some reward, not equal to the reward that you would have if you actually thought about what you were saying.
So, Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, الذكر يكون بالقلب ويكون نعم. He says, الذكر يكون بالقلب ويكون باللسان. والأفضل منه ما كان بالقلب واللسان جميعا. Dhikr can be with the heart. What is that? You're thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That thought process alone, without even saying anything off your tongue, that thought process is ibadah. It increases you in the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Increases your knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And dhikr can also be with the tongue. So a person is just saying something. Allah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, subhanallah. But he's not really actually thinking about what he's saying. And then he says, and it is done with the heart and the tongue at the same time. He said, and this is the best. This is the best form of dhikr. Ibn al-Qayyim has a similar statement. I'm not going to mention it in totality. The point is to know that they do mention, that the scholars of Islam mention, that dhikr on the tongue alone is rewarded, but there's not a lot of reward to it. But I'm saying that what's important is to get in the habit, because the tongue does remind the heart, just like the heart influences the tongue. And so sometimes you might just be saying something on your tongue, and then you start to think about it, just because it is a habit that you have. And so then you begin to think about what you're saying on your tongue. You're saying something good. And the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him say that which is good or keep silent. the scholars of hadith say that this shows that saying something that is good is better than being silent. It's better than being silent, which is why the Prophet ﷺ started off by saying, say that which is good. So just to have on your tongue, subhanallah, 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 is better than not saying anything. It's better than not saying, even if you're not really thinking about it. And then hopefully your tongue will remind your heart.
Amen.
1 second.
Amen. Many of us don't know Arabic.
Right.
Question. Do we fall into the category of just the tongue, we don't know what we're saying? Or can we say it sometimes in English?
Right. So if you don't know what you're saying, so most of the dhikr that people make, I'm saying like saying La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, most people know it. They know it. And again, like we said, knowledge has various levels. What subhanallah means to somebody who studied Islam or who's, I have a book that's 2 volumes on alhamdulillah. 2 volumes on alhamdulillah. Now, it was a doctoral thesis from the University of Medina. Shaykh al-Abdad was the mushrif, the advisor. The point is that to the person who wrote that, alhamdulillah means a lot more than it means to some other people, right? So again, what we're talking about is knowing is of different levels, right? So here, subhanallah, what time is Maghrib? 7 minutes? Wow. Tight. I'm gonna stop. But let me just 1 second. So to your point, that if a person knows it, meaning they have a general knowledge of that meaning, then no, they don't fall into saying it without knowing its meanings. However, a lot of people do memorize certain things. They have no clue what they're talking about. That person is better for them to say whatever it is in English. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna Allah la yaqbalu du'a min qalbin ghafilin lah." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept dua from a heart that is heedless and unattentive. The heart that is unattentive, if you don't know what you're talking about, there's no way that you can be attentive. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Yeah, questions in the back?
Yeah, I had a question.
Islam.
How can one take caution in not overdoing dhikr, such as like Sufism?
Yeah.
There was a particular shaykh who came in.
Let me stop you there. Not all Sufis go overboard in dhikr. The problem is that most Sufi groups or tariqas, ways, they innovate dhikr. So they do, it's not that they do necessarily, they do more. Sometimes they do more. The issue is how they're doing the dhikr, right? And so they may have a certain formula that they use that was not prescribed by the Prophet ﷺ. Or they may, do it at times when it shouldn't be done. Like group dhikr after salat, for example, such that it disturbs everybody. But that's, so hopefully that answers the question. But there's no, really, I don't know anybody who mentions Allah or remembers Allah too much. I don't even know that that's possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Allah knows best. Nah, in the back, and then you shake.
Wayne, what?
Sidi. Wait one second. Notice that they're saving you because I have a question for you all. And it looks like we might not get to it. So.
How does the aspect of the hadith when the remembering Allah and how when the people were trapped in a cave and then they remembered Allah and then they talked about the things that they did of good deeds, and how did that tie into remembering Allah and the beginning and the opposite, like obedience and disobedience,
right?
And how that increases Emaan or increases faith.
Right. So they were trapped in a cave, not to mention the whole story. But they were trapped in a cave. And they remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and most people do when the going gets tough. Right? So that's why the Prophet ﷺ told Ibn Abbas when he was a young boy, right? Ibn Abbas at this stage is 12, 13 years old maybe. He says to him, Ta'arraf ila Allahi fil-rakha, ya'rifka fi-shidda. Get to know Allah when things are going good. Allah will know you at times of difficulty. Don't wait until things get difficult to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make that relationship prior to that. Because then it'll be easy. You already established something. Everybody knows Allah. Even the mushrikun. When the waves start coming up and it look like the boat's going to sink.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Right? They're calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Alone.
Alone. That's it. They call nobody else. But then when they get back to safe land now, at this point they're committing shirk. So, the reality is not. So to go back to that, what happened now is they, to use the terminology, tawassalu bi salihi a'mali. They sought a means to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by mentioning and remembering some of the good deeds that they did sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they said, they asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, if this act that I've done was sincerely for you, then please make us a way. Make us a way out, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them, after the third one made dua, mentioning the deed that he did to get out of that situation. And it does show that remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and drawing closer to him is a way out of difficulty. Is a way out of difficulty. Nah, Shaykh.
That's tied to the reasoning. Right. I'm asking.
No. That's what they said. That's why part of their dua was, oh Allah, if I did this sincerely for your face. Right. And that does indicate the importance of sincerity. So here, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the heart leads to dua, it leads to dhikr, it leads to, you saying things off of your tongue that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh Shaheed has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. This elegant down there.
Like the Salam. Shaheed, I have a question. So, is Shaheed from the names of Allah? Can we call you Abdul Shaheed or should we call you Shaheed?
Abdul Shaheed.
Abdul Shaheed?
Abdul Shaheed.
All right, we'll study that.
Not sugar and shit. May Allah keep you firm.
The reason why, I'm just going to tell you right now. Shaheed does not come in the Quran in that form with the aleph and the lam. So you have some scholars who do not see Shaheed to be from the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the lack of there being what's the aleph and lam? The definite article. There we go. Brother Shaheed. Abdul Shaheed.
Shaheed is in there.
Abdul Shaheed. Yeah. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in. Shaheed. But we'll get to that later. Because the scholars have different methodologies for identifying. They have some that there's no doubt about. And then there's quite a few that there's difference of opinion. Go ahead, Shaheed.
The Quran, Shaykh, is the best of dhikr. No?
Correct.
Now, a person is advised to read Quran even though he doesn't understand what's being read.
Right.
No?
Right. Okay. So, all right. So I'll restate that. I'll restate that, and then I know that that needs to be called, huh?
Yes.
Is this time to slide now?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'll finish this off right quick. So the Shaykh mentioned that the Quran is the best of dhikr. The best form of dhikr is actually recitation of the Quran. And we're encouraged to recite the Quran, even if we don't understand what it means. And that's because the Quran is special. That's because the Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our Prophet ﷺ mentioned a specific reward for recitation of the Quran. However, that does not mean, and again, that's dhikr bil lisan. That's just mentioning with the tongue. That does not mean that we should ever be satisfied with not understanding the Quran. If and أضعف الإيمان, the weakest of faith, inshallah, is to read it side by side. To read the Arabic and then to read an English translation to help you get a better understanding of what it is that you're reading. All right, so I wasn't able to ask you all my question. And so now we're just turning it into homework. At the beginning, and there's going to be more to come, inshallah. At the beginning of class, I asked you to list 5 things. 5 what? What were they about?
That increase your
You
iman.
feel like it increases your iman.
Right.
We just covered 7 right now. Are any of the 7 that we have, do they match your 5? If not, what are you going to do practically from the 7 that we covered on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or how frequently are you going to implement what we've covered today to help increase your faith? I want you to come up with a program for yourself based off of what we've covered. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to discuss that next week. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, wallahu a'lam, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. And the sisters too, you're going to have a mic next week.